The rain-soaked streets of Seattle gleamed under the neon glow. But for Eli, the world was a gray blur of despair. At 24, he stood at the edge of Pike Place Market, clutching a tattered guitar case, his only companion in a city that felt like a stranger. Tonight, he was invisible until a stranger's voice, sharp and warm, cut through the drizzle. "You gonna play that thing or just hug it all night?" Eli's heart jolted. He turned to see a man, maybe a year older, leaning against a lamppost. His name was Caleb, though Eli wouldn't know that until later. With jet black hair and a leather jacket that screamed defiance, Caleb's smirk held a challenge, but his eyes, deep hazel, flickering with curiosity, betrayed something softer. In that moment, Eli felt seen for the first time in months, maybe years. Eli had been running for as long as he could remember, not from the law or some cinematic villain, but from himself. Raised in a small Idaho town where different was a dirty word, he'd learned early to hide the part of him that loved too fiercely, too openly, too wrongly in the eyes of his family. At 18, he'd packed a bag, grabbed his guitar, and fled to Seattle, chasing dreams of music and freedom. But the city was no fairy tale. Gigs were scarce, rent was brutal, and the weight of rejection from auditions, from strangers, from his own reflection, had worn him thin. Tonight, he'd planned to busk for a few bucks, maybe enough for a coffee and a warm corner to sleep in. Caleb, on the other hand, was a spark in the dark. A bartender at a dive bar called the Rusty Anchor. He'd grown up in Seattle's underbelly, where survival meant wearing confidence like armor. At 25, he was openly queer, unapologetic, and fiercely protective of the chosen family he'd built among misfits and dreamers. But beneath the bravado, Caleb carried his own scars: parents who'd kicked him out at 16, a string of lovers who'd left when things got too real. He didn't trust easily, but something about Eli, with his hunched shoulders and haunted eyes, tugged at a corner of his heart he'd long since boarded up. "Play something," Caleb said, nodding at the guitar case. His tone was casual, but his eyes locked onto Eli's, daring him to take a chance. Eli hesitated. The market was alive with tourists and vendors, their chatter drowning out the ache in his chest. But Caleb's gaze held him steady, a lifeline in the chaos. Eli opened the case, his fingers trembling as they found the strings. He played a soft, melancholic chord, then another, letting the notes weave a story he couldn't yet speak. The crowd slowed, a few heads turning, but Eli only saw Caleb. The man's smirk faded, replaced by something raw, unguarded. When Eli finished, a handful of coins clinked into the open case. But Caleb's quiet "damn" was the only applause that mattered. They talked until the market closed, words spilling like the rain. Eli shared fragments of his past, his father's cold silences, his mother's tearful prayers to fix him. Caleb listened, offering no pity, only a nod that said he understood. In return, Caleb spoke of his own battles, the nights spent couch surfing, the bar fights he'd won and lost, the dream of owning a music venue where people like them could belong. By the time they parted, Eli felt a flicker of something dangerous: hope. The next night, Eli returned to the market, half expecting Caleb to be a ghost of a moment. But there he was, leaning against the same lamppost, a coffee in each hand. "Thought you might need this," Caleb said, handing one over. Eli's fingers brushed Caleb's, and the warmth of the cup was nothing compared to the spark that shot through him. Over the next week, they fell into a rhythm. Eli played, Caleb listened, and their conversations stretched into the early hours. Caleb taught Eli the city's secrets: hidden jazz clubs, hole-in-the-wall diners, a rooftop where the stars felt close enough to touch. Eli, in turn, shared his music, each song a confession he hadn't dared voice before. Caleb never pushed, but his presence was a quiet demand. Be yourself. Be enough. One night, under the glow of a streetlight, Caleb's hand lingered on Eli's arm. You ever think about staying in one place? He asked, his voice low. Eli's breath caught. He wanted to say yes, to admit he'd imagined a life where he wasn't running, where he could wake up to Caleb's crooked smile every morning. But fear clamped down hard. What if this was just another fleeting connection? Another heartbreak waiting to happen? Before Eli could answer, a shout shattered the moment. A group of drunk college kids stumbled by, one of them sneering. Faggots. The word hit Eli like a fist, dragging him back to Idaho, to the slurs spray-painted on his locker. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. He stepped closer to Eli, shielding him, his voice steady. Keep walking, he told the group, his tone a blade. They muttered but moved on, leaving Eli shaking. You okay? Caleb asked, his hand still on Eli's arm. Eli nodded, but the truth was he wasn't. The word had reopened old wounds, and the fear of being seen off, being known, threatened to swallow him whole. Caleb didn't push for more. Instead, he pulled Eli into a nearby diner, ordered them both pie, and talked about everything and nothing until Eli's heart stopped racing. That night, as they sat on the rooftop Caleb had shown him, Eli made a choice. He leaned in, his lips brushing Caleb's in a kiss that felt like coming home. Caleb kissed him back, fierce and gentle, and for the first time, Eli believed he could belong somewhere, belong to someone. But the world wasn't done testing them. A week later, Eli got a call from a small record label. They'd seen a video of him busking, uploaded by a stranger in the market. They wanted him to audition in Los Angeles. It was the break he'd dreamed of, but it meant leaving Seattle, leaving Caleb. The thought tore at him. Could he chase his dream without losing the one person who made him feel whole? As Eli wrestled with the decision, Caleb faced his own battle. The rusty anchor was shutting down, a casualty of rising rents. His dream of a music venue felt further away than ever. And now Eli, the one person who made him believe in futures, might leave. Caleb had always been the strong one, but the thought of losing Eli cracked something deep inside him. They stood at a crossroads, two souls harmonizing in a world that didn't always sing their song. The choice loomed, hold on or let go, stay or run. And in the quiet moments, under the Seattle stars, they began to write the ballad of their hearts. Eli sat on the edge of his borrowed mattress in a cramped studio apartment, the audition offer burning a hole in his pocket. The email from the label, Sunset Records, was short but electrifying. We see potential. Come to LA. One shot. It was everything he'd chased since he was a kid, strumming chords in his basement, dreaming of stages bigger than his hometown's church talent show. But now, the dream felt like a betrayal. Caleb's face, his crooked smile, the way his eyes softened when Eli played, kept flashing in his mind, anchoring him to Seattle. Caleb, meanwhile, was pouring drinks at the Rusty Anchor, the bar's final nights ticking down like a death sentence. The neon sign flickered, half the letters dead, mirroring the ache in his chest. He'd built a life here, a sanctuary for people like him who didn't fit anywhere else. Losing it felt like losing a piece of himself. And now Eli, with his quiet strength and songs that broke Caleb open, was slipping away too. Caleb had never been good at goodbyes, but he'd learned to brace for them. Everyone left eventually. That night, Eli showed up at the bar, guitar case slung over his shoulder. The place was packed, the air thick with sweat and nostalgia as regulars toasted the Anchor's final days. Caleb spotted Eli and grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. You look like you're carrying the world, Caleb said, sliding a beer across the counter. Eli took it, his fingers lingering on the cold glass, searching for words. "I got an audition," Eli blurted, his voice barely audible over the jukebox. "In LA. Next week." Caleb's hand froze mid-wipe on the bar. For a split second, his face was unreadable, a mask Eli couldn't crack. Then he nodded, forcing a smile. "That's huge. Man, you gotta go." But his voice was tight, like he was swallowing glass. Eli wanted to argue, to say he'd stay, but the words stuck. Instead, he pulled out his guitar and climbed onto the small stage in the corner. The crowd hushed as he played, a raw, aching ballad about searching for home in a world that kept moving. Caleb watched from behind the bar, his heart pounding. Every note felt like a goodbye, and he hated how much it hurt. After the set, they slipped out to the alley behind the bar, the city humming around them. Eli's hands shook as he lit a cigarette, a habit he'd picked up in moments of panic. "I don't know what to do," he admitted, exhaling smoke into the night. "This is my shot, Caleb." But you read the first thing that's felt real in years. Caleb leaned against the brick wall, his arms crossed like a shield. "You think I don't get it? I've been chasing dreams too, Eli. But dreams don't keep you warm at night." His voice cracked, and he looked away, cursing under his breath. "If you stay for me, you'll hate me later, and I can't live with that." The words cut deeper than Eli expected. He stepped closer, close enough to feel Caleb's breath, to see the storm in his eyes. "What if I don't want to choose?" Eli asked, his voice raw. "What if I want both you and the music?" Caleb laughed, bitter and soft. "Life doesn't work like that. You know it doesn't." But Eli wasn't ready to give up. He grabbed Caleb's hand, pulling him into a kiss that tasted of desperation and hope. Caleb kissed him back, hard, like he was trying to memorize every second. When they pulled apart, Eli whispered, "Come with me." It was reckless, impossible, but the words were out before he could stop them. Caleb blinked, stunned. "To LA. You serious?" Eli nodded, his heart racing. "I don't know how it'll work, but I know I don't want to do this without you." For the first time, Caleb looked scared not of a fight or a loss, but of the possibility of something real. He opened his mouth to answer, but headlights swept across the alley, and a voice shouted Caleb's name. The bar needed him back. The moment broke, and they returned to the chaos inside. But the question hung between them. Over the next few days, Eli prepared for the audition, his mind a tug-of-war between ambition and love. Caleb threw himself into saving the anchor, rallying regulars to petition the landlord. But the clock was ticking. They stole moments to get through a coffee shop here, a late-night walk through, but the unspoken tension grew. Could they build a future together, or were they just delaying the inevitable? One evening, as they sat on Caleb's tiny balcony overlooking the city, Eli played a new song. It was about two souls finding each other in the noise, about harmony and chaos. Caleb listened, his eyes glistening. When the last note faded, he said, "You're gonna kill it in LA, but don't ask me to decide yet. I need time." Eli nodded, his throat tight. Time was the one thing they didn't have. The audition was days away, and the anchor's final night loomed. As they sat there, hands intertwined, the city's pulse seemed to echo their own frantic, alive and uncertain. The anchor's final night was a collision of heartbreak and defiance. The bar was alive with music, laughter, and the clink of glasses, but the air carried a funeral's weight. Eli stood at the edge of the stage, watching Caleb work the crowd, his charisma a beacon in the dim light. Tomorrow, Eli would board a bus to LA, his guitar and a one-way ticket his only baggage. The thought of leaving Caleb behind felt like tearing out a piece of his soul. Caleb, meanwhile, was fighting his own war. The petition to save the anchor had failed. The landlord unmoved by their pleas. He'd spent the day boxing up memories' old photos. A cracked mug from his first shift. A playlist of songs that defined this place. Every glance at Eli, tuning his guitar in the corner, was a reminder of what else he might lose. He wanted to say yes, to follow Eli to LA, but the fear of starting over off being nothing but a tag-along clawed at him. Eli took the stage, his heart pounding. The crowd cheered. Familiar faces from nights spent pouring out his soul. He played a set that burned with everything he felt: love, fear, hope, loss. The final song was for Caleb, a quiet ballad about two hearts beating as one, even across miles. Caleb stood frozen behind the bar, his hands gripping the counter as Eli's voice washed over him. When the song ended, the crowd roared, but Caleb's eyes were locked on Eli's, a silent promise in the chaos. After the bar closed, they stayed behind, cleaning up in silence. Empty bottles clinked, chairs scraped, and the weight of tomorrow pressed down. Finally, Eli broke the quiet. "I'm leaving at dawn," he said, his voice steady but soft. "I want you to come, but I need to know now." Caleb set down a glass, his hands shaking. "Eli, I've got nothing left here. The anchor's gone. My people are scattering. But LA, that's your dream, not mine." He paused, his voice dropping. "I don't know who I'd be there." Eli stepped closer, his eyes fierce. "You'd be you. The guy who fights for what matters. The guy who makes me believe I'm enough." He took Caleb's hand, pressing it to his chest. "We can figure it out. Together." Caleb pulled away, running a hand through his hair. "You make it sound easy. It's not. I've been burned before. Eli, people leave, or they change, or they realize I'm not enough." His voice cracked, and Eli saw the boy who'd been kicked out at 16, the man who'd built walls to survive. "I'm not them," Eli said, his voice low but firm. "I'm not leaving you. Not unless you tell me to." The words hung there, heavy and true. Caleb looked at him, searching for a lie, but found only certainty. For the first time, he let himself believe Eli might stay. They kissed, slow and deep, the empty bar their witness. When they pulled apart, Caleb whispered, "I'll think about it. But you need to go to LA. Don't miss this." Eli nodded, his heart a mix of hope and dread. They spent the night together, tangled in sheets and promises. But the morning came too soon. At the bus station, Eli stood with his guitar, the city waking around him. Caleb was there, his leather jacket a familiar comfort. "I'm not saying yes," Caleb said, his voice rough. "But I'm not saying no. Go kill that audition. I'll find you." Eli smiled, his chest tight, and boarded the bus. As it pulled away, Caleb stood alone, watching until it disappeared. In LA, Eli poured everything into the audition. The studio was sleek, intimidating, but his music was raw and real. The producers leaned forward, captivated, and by the end, they offered him a deal on the spot, a small one, but a start. Eli's heart soared, but it was incomplete without Caleb. He called, texted, but Caleb's responses were short, distant. Doubt crept in. Had he misread everything? Back in Seattle, Caleb was adrift. The anchor was gone, his friends moving on. He wandered the city, haunted by Eli's absence. One night, he found himself at the market, at the spot where they'd met. A street performer was playing, and the music hit like a memory. Caleb closed his eyes, picturing Eli's hands on the strings, his voice weaving stories. And he knew he couldn't let this go. Eli's first week in LA was a whirlwind of meetings, contracts, and unfamiliar faces. The city was a beast, bright, loud, and indifferent. He rented a tiny room in a shared house, the walls thin enough to hear his neighbors' arguments. Every night, he wrote songs, pouring his longing for Caleb into every note. But Caleb's texts grew sporadic, his calls unanswered. Eli's fear grew. Had Caleb decided to let him go? In Seattle, Caleb was rebuilding. He'd taken a job at a new bar, a soulless chain that paid the bills but lacked the anchor's heart. He missed Eli with an ache that surprised him. Every song on the radio, every guitarist on a street corner, reminded him of what he'd lost. He'd promised Eli he'd think about LA, but the idea terrified him. Seattle was home, flawed but familiar. LA was a gamble, and Caleb had lost too many bets before. One night, Eli called, his voice shaky over the line. "I got the deal," he said. "They want an EP, maybe a tour. It's real." Caleb. Caleb's chest tightened with pride, but also pain. "That's amazing," he said, meaning it. "You're going to be a star." But Eli's silence said more than words. "I don't want it without you," Eli finally said. "Tell me what you're thinking." Caleb wanted to say he was ready, that he'd pack a bag and follow Eli anywhere. But the words caught in his throat. "I'm still figuring it out," he said instead, hating how weak it sounded. Eli's sigh was audible, heavy with disappointment. "Okay," Eli said, "but don't make me wait forever." The call ended, and Caleb felt the distance between them stretch wider than miles. Eli threw himself into his music, but the joy was hollow. The producers pushed him to write radio-friendly hits, but his heart kept spilling into ballads about love and loss. One song, Harmonized Hearts, became an Obsessiona raw, aching tribute to Caleb. He sent a demo to Caleb, hoping it would say what he couldn't. Caleb listened, alone in his apartment, and the lyrics broke him open. Two souls, one song. Through the dark we'll carry on. He cried for the first time in years. In Seattle, Caleb started making plans. He saved every penny, researched LA's music scene, and reached out to old contacts. The idea of starting over was daunting, but the thought of losing Eli was worse. He found a listing for a small venue for sale in La Pipe Dream, but it sparked something. Maybe he could build a new anchor, a place for them both. Eli, meanwhile, faced a new challenge. The label wanted him to project a marketable image, which meant downplaying his queerness. "It's just business," a producer said, shrugging. "Fans aren't ready for that yet." Eli's stomach churned. He'd spent years hiding who he was. He couldn't do it again. At a meeting, he played Harmonized Hearts and told them it was non-negotiable. The room went quiet, but the head producer nodded. "It's a risk," she said, "but it's you." That night, Eli sent Caleb a video of the performance. "This is who I am," he wrote, "and I'm not ashamed. I need you to know that." Caleb watched, his heart pounding. Eli's courage was a mirror, reflecting his own fears. He booked a bus ticket to LA the next morning. When Caleb arrived, Eli was at a rehearsal, unaware. Caleb stood outside the studio, nerves twisting in his gut. He'd brought nothing but a backpack and a dream. When Eli stepped out, guitar in hand, he froze at the sight of Caleb. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Eli ran to him, pulling him into a hug that felt like salvation. "You came," Eli whispered, his voice thick. Caleb nodded, his throat tight. Couldn't stay away. They stood there, in the LA dusk, two souls finding each other again. But the road ahead wasn't easy. Caleb needed a job, a place to stay. Eli's career was just beginning. and the label's demands loomed. They were together, but the world was still waiting to test their harmony. Caleb's first days in LA were a crash course in survival. The city's sprawl dwarfed Seattle, its rhythm unrelenting. He crashed on Eli's floor, the shared house a maze of strangers and noise. Job hunting was brutal. Bars wanted experience he had, but none offered the anchor's soul. Still, being near Eli grounded him. They'd steal moments between Eli's rehearsals, sharing takeout on a fire escape, their laughter a shield against the chaos. Eli's EP was taking shape. Harmonized Hearts, its centerpiece. The label was warming to his authenticity, but the pressure was relentless. Late nights in the studio left him drained, his voice hoarse, but Caleb's presence was a lifeline. One night, Eli played a rough cut of the song, and Caleb's eyes shone with pride. "You're telling our story," Caleb said, his voice soft. Eli smiled, but worry lingered. Could they survive LA's grind? Caleb landed a job at a dive bar in Silver Lake, a gritty spot with a small stage for open mics. It wasn't the anchor, but it was a start. He worked nights, pouring drinks while dreaming of the venue he'd seen online. The listing was still active, a rundown space with potential. He showed Eli the ad one morning over coffee, his voice cautious but hopeful. "We could make it ours," he said. "A place for people like us." Eli's heart raced. The idea was wild, impossible on their budget, but Caleb's passion was infectious. "Let's see it," Eli said, and they drove to the venue, a cramped building tucked between a taco shop and a laundromat. The walls were peeling, the stage creaky, but Eli saw what Caleb saw: a home for their dreams. They stood on the empty stage, hands clasped, and for a moment, the future felt possible. But reality hit hard. The venue's price was a pipe dream, and Eli's advance from the label barely covered rent. Caleb's bar shifts helped, but they were scraping by. Doubt crept in, whispering that they'd been naive to think they could have it all. One night, after a long rehearsal, Eli snapped at Caleb over a forgotten bill, his exhaustion spilling over. Caleb fired back, his own stress boiling. "I left everything for this," he said, his voice sharp. "Don't make me regret it." The fight stung, but it forced them to talk. They sat on the fire escape, the city humming below, and laid it all bare: fears, dreams, the weight of their choices. Eli admitted he was terrified of failing, of letting Caleb down. Caleb confessed he felt lost without the anchor, afraid he'd never find his place in LA. The honesty hurt, but it stitched them closer. They kissed, a promise to keep fighting. Eli's label scheduled a showcase for industry insiders, a make-or-break moment for his EP. He poured everything into preparing. But the night before, he got a call from his mother. Her voice was shaky, the first contact in years. "I heard your song," she said. I'm trying to understand." It wasn't acceptance, but it was a crack in the wall. Eli hung up, tears in his eyes, and told Caleb. For the first time, he felt like his past and present might reconcile. Caleb, meanwhile, was hustling. He'd connected with a local promoter who liked his vision for the venue. They met at the bar, the promoter skeptical but intrigued. "You've got fire," she told Caleb. "Find the money, and I'll help you make it happen." It was a long shot, but Caleb felt alive again, driven by the dream he and Eli shared. The showcase arrived, and Eli took the stage, his guitar an extension of his heart. Caleb was in the crowd, his presence steadying. Eli played Harmonized Hearts, his voice raw and true, and the room fell silent. Then erupted. Industry reps approached. Deals whispered. But Eli only saw Caleb's proud smile. That night, They celebrated in their tiny room, dreaming of a future where music and love could coexist. But LA wasn't done with them. The bar where Caleb worked was raided for permit violations, leaving him jobless. The venue's cellar raised the price, crushing their hopes. As they faced these blows, Eli and Caleb clung to each other, their love a stubborn flame in the dark. The raid on the Silver Lake bar hit Caleb like a punch. He'd been let go with a shrug from the manager. No severance. No warning. Back at Eli's place, he paced the tiny room, frustration boiling. "I moved here for us," he said, his voice tight. "Now what? I'm back to square one." Eli sat on the bed, his guitar silent, searching for words. He wanted to fix it, but his own stress tour dates looming. Label pressure mounting left him stretched thin. Eli reached for Caleb's hand, pulling him to sit. "We're not done," he said, his voice steady. "You're not done. We'll find a way." Caleb wanted to believe him, but the city felt like quicksand. Still, Eli's touch was a reminder of why he'd come. They fell asleep holding each other, the weight of uncertainty lighter in their shared warmth. The next morning, Eli had an idea. He'd been invited to a local radio show to promote his EP, a small but growing platform for indie artists. "Come with me," he told Caleb. "Talk about the venue. Maybe someone will hear." Caleb hesitated. Pitching dreams on air felt desperate, but Eli's belief in him was hard to resist. They went to the station, a cramped studio in Hollywood, where the host, a warm woman named Maya, welcomed them. Eli performed Harmonized Hearts, his voice filling the airwaves. Maya, moved, asked about the song's inspiration. Eli glanced at Caleb, his smile soft. "It's about finding home in someone, no matter where you are," he said. Caleb's heart swelled when Maya turned to him, asking about his plans. Caleb spoke from the gut. "I want a space where people like us queer, different dreamers can belong. A venue for music, for community." His voice shook, but it carried conviction. The interview aired, and the response was immediate. Listeners flooded the station's social media, moved by Eli's music and Caleb's vision. A local investor, a queer woman named Lena who'd built a small real estate empire, reached out. She'd heard the broadcast and wanted to meet. Over coffee, Lena listened as Caleb pitched the venue, his passion spilling over. "I like your fire," she said. "I'll back you partially. Find the rest of the money, and we've got a deal." Eli's tour kicked off, a string of small venues across California. Caleb joined him for the first show, a sweaty club in San Diego. Watching Eli perform, Caleb felt the gap between them shrink. Eli dedicated Harmonized Hearts to him, and the crowd's cheers felt like a shared victory. But the tour meant weeks apart, and Caleb stayed in LA, chasing funds for the venue. He worked odd jobs, delivery, bartending gigs, every dollar saved for their dream. One night, alone in the shared house, Caleb found an old notebook of Eli's, filled with lyrics and scribbled dreams. One page stopped him, a sketch of a stage with Caleb's place written above it. Tears stung his eyes. Eli hadn't just believed in him, seen their future together. Caleb called him, the tour bus humming in the background. "I'm all in," Caleb said. "For the venue. For us. Don't give up on me." Eli's laugh was warm. "Never." Lena introduced Caleb to a network of queer entrepreneurs. And slowly, the money came together: crowdfunding, small investments, his own savings. The venue was theirs, but it needed work. Caleb threw himself into renovations, painting walls and fixing the stage, while Eli sent voice memos of new songs, their connection unbroken by distance. Eli's tour ended, and he returned to LA, exhausted but triumphant. The EP was gaining traction, and Harmonized Hearts was climbing indie charts. He found Caleb at the venue, covered in paint, grinning. They stood on the stage, the space still rough but alive with possibility. "This is ours," Caleb said, pulling Eli close. They kissed, the echo of their dreams filling the room. But challenges lingered. Eli's label pushed for a bigger tour, one that could take him across the country. Caleb's venue was weeks from opening, demanding his full attention. They faced a new question. Could their love survive the pull of their dreams? The venue, now named Harmony Haven, was a labor of love. Caleb spent days sanding floors, wiring lights, and booking acts, his vision taking shape. Eli helped when he could, stealing time between studio sessions. The space was small but vibrant, with a mural of intertwined hearts on the wall, a nod to Eli's song. Opening night was set, a celebration of music and community. But tension simmered. Eli's label was pushing for a national tour, and the dates clashed with the venue's launch. One evening, they argued in the half-finished venue. Eli's voice was sharp. "I can't miss this tour. Caleb, it's my shot." Caleb nodded, but his jaw was tight. "And this is mine. I need you here." The words stung, both knowing the other was right. They stood on opposite sides of the stage, the distance between them more than physical. But neither walked away. Instead, they sat on the stage's edge, sharing a beer, and talked until dawn. Eli proposed a compromise. He'd do a shorter tour, hitting key cities, in return for the opening. Caleb agreed, but the strain lingered. They were learning love wasn't just passionate, it was sacrifice, trust, and showing up. Eli left for the tour, and Caleb threw himself into the venue, booking local queer artists and planning an open mic to draw crowds. The tour was grueling. Eli played to packed rooms, his music connecting with fans who saw themselves in his lyrics. But late nights on the road left him lonely, missing Caleb's steady presence. He called every night, their conversations a lifeline. Caleb shared stories of the venue's Progressa new sound system, a drag queen who'd signed on to perform. Eli sent photos from dive bars and city skylines, each one a promise to come home. Opening night arrived, and Caleb stood in Harmony Haven, nerves electric. The space was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. He'd poured everything into this, his savings, his heart, his hope. But without Eli, it felt incomplete. As the first act took the stage, Caleb scanned the crowd, his heart sinking. Eli's tour stop in Portland had run late. He wasn't sure Eli would make it. Then, as a poet finished her set, the door swung open. Eli stood there, guitar case in hand, his face lit with exhaustion and love. The crowd parted as he walked to Caleb, pulling him into a hug that said everything words couldn't. "I wouldn't miss this," Eli whispered. Caleb's throat tightened, and he led Eli to the stage. Eli played Harmonized Hearts, the crowd swaying, some in tears. Caleb watched from the sidelines, his heart full. The song wasn't just There's Anna Maria, it was a beacon for everyone in the room. A reminder that love could thrive in a world that often fought against it. The night was a success, with Lena and other investors toasting Caleb's vision. Harmony Haven was alive. But the tour loomed. Eli's label wanted him on the road for months, and Caleb couldn't leave the venue. Not now. They faced the reality of distance, of dreams pulling them apart. One night, in the quiet of the venue, Eli took Caleb's hand. "We've made it this far," he said. "We'll figure this out too." Caleb nodded, but fear lingered. Could their love withstand the miles? They spent the next weeks preparing. Eli helped book acts for the venue, ensuring Caleb had support while he was gone. Caleb, in turn, promised to visit when he could, to keep their dream alive. They stood on the stage one last time before Eli's departure, singing together a duet of hope and resilience. The harmony of their voices echoed in the empty room, a promise to return to each other. As Eli boarded the tour bus, Caleb stood outside, his leather jacket a familiar silhouette. They didn't say goodbye. Instead, Eli pressed his hand to the window, and Caleb mirrored it, their connection unbroken. The bus pulled away, and Caleb walked back to Harmony Haven, ready to keep their dream alive. Eli's tour stretched across the country, each city a blur of stages and strangers. His music soared, harmonized hearts, becoming an anthem for those who felt unseen. Fans shared stories of their own struggles, their own loves, and Eli carried them with him, a reminder of why he sang. But every night, in hotel rooms or on the bus, he ached for Caleb. Video calls were their lifeline, Caleb's tired smile grounding him across the miles. In LA, Caleb ran Harmony Haven with fierce determination. The venue became a haven for queer artists, misfits, and dreamers, its stage alive with poetry, music, and drag. Lena became a mentor, helping Caleb navigate the business side, while the community rallied around him. But the work was relentless, and Eli's absence was a constant ache. Caleb kept a photo of them on the venue's wall, a reminder of what they were building. One night, a heckler disrupted an open mic, shouting slurs at a trans performer. Caleb stepped in, his voice calm but steel. "Not here," he said, escorting the man out. The crowd cheered, and the performer hugged Caleb, tears in her eyes. Moments like that reminded him why he'd fought for this place. But late at night, alone, he wondered if he and Eli could keep this uplove stretched thin by distance and dreams. Eli faced his own battles. A tabloid ran a story speculating about his sexuality, twisting his openness into gossip. The label panicked, suggesting he clarify his image. Eli refused, his voice firm. "I'm not hiding who I am," he told them. "Not for you. Not for anyone." The backlash was swift. Some venues dropped him, citing controversy. But his fans rallied, streaming Harmonized Hearts in protest. And new venues booked him, drawn to his authenticity. Caleb flew to Chicago for one of Eli's shows, a surprise planned weeks in advance. When Eli saw him in the crowd, his voice broke mid-song, but he kept playing, pouring his heart into every note. After the show, they fell into each other's arms, the months apart melting away. They spent the night talking, laughing, planning. Caleb shared news. Harmony Haven was breaking even, with a festival in the works. Eli grinned, proud but wistful. "I want to be there," he said, "for all of it." They made a plan. Eli's tour would end in 3 months, and he'd return to LA for good. Caleb would expand the venue, maybe even start a label for queer artists. They'd build a life together, not just a dream. It wasn't easy. Eli's label pushed back, and Caleb's investors wanted faster returns, but they were done letting the world dictate their path. The tour's final show was in Seattle, a homecoming. Harmony Haven hosted a pop-up event, and Eli played to a crowd of old friends and new fans. Caleb stood by the stage, his heart full, as Eli sang Harmonized Hearts. The lyrics took on new meaning, a testament to their journey, their resilience. The crowd sang along, their voices a chorus of hope. After the show, Eli and Caleb stood outside, the city's lights reflecting their shared past. Eli's mother was there, hesitant but present, her presence a fragile bridge to healing. Caleb's chosen family surrounded them, toasting their love, their venue, their future. Eli took Caleb's hand, his voice soft. "We made it." Caleb smiled, his eyes glistening. Yeah, we did. Their journey wasn't over. There would be more fights, more dreams, more nights apart. But they'd learned to harmonize two souls. One song, finding home in each other. Harmony Haven stood as their legacy, a place where love and music could thrive, no matter the odds. And as they kissed under the Seattle stars, they knew this was their ballad, and it was only the beginning.